Admiral Jake Morrison stood at the center of the bridge, his hands clasped behind his back as he watched the stars through the main view screen. The USS Liberty moved through space at a steady pace, leading a fleet of 37 human ships, deeper into what the locals called Zephyrian space. Jake had been an admiral for 12 years, but he had never seen anything quite like this mission. The human fleet was small compared to what they might face out here. Each ship carried between 200 and 800 crew members. They had good weapons, strong shields, and fast engines. But Jake knew that numbers would not be on their side if things went bad. Lisa Park sat at the communication station, her fingers dancing over the controls as she monitored dozens of different channels. She was young for her rank, only 28, but she had the best ears in the fleet. If someone was trying to talk to them, Lisa would hear it first. The bridge was quiet except for the soft hum of the ship's systems. Captain Rick Stone stood near the tactical display, studying the sensor readings. Lieutenant Amy Foster monitored the navigation systems. Chief Engineer Dan Murphy checked the power levels from his station. Everything was running smooth and normal. Then, Lisa's console started beeping. "Admiral," she said, turning in her chair. "We're getting an incoming transmission. It's on a wide band frequency, aimed at our entire fleet." Jake walked over to her station. "Source?" "Unknown, sir. But it's powerful. Whoever is sending this has serious equipment." Jake looked around the bridge. Every face was turned toward him, waiting for orders. He had learned long ago that the first rule of space exploration was simple: always listen before you act. "Put it through," he said. "Fleet-wide. Let everyone hear this." Lisa pressed a few buttons and nodded. "You're connected, Admiral. Broadcasting to all ships." The main screen flickered and changed. The image of stars disappeared, replaced by something that made several bridge crew members take a step back. The creature on the screen was tall and thin, with blue-gray skin that looked rough like tree bark. Its head was long and narrow, with 4 eyes arranged in a diamond pattern. When it opened its mouth to speak, Jake could see rows of sharp teeth. It wore what looked like a military uniform covered in medals and symbols. "I am Commander Vexthala of the Zephyrian Imperial Fleet," the creature said. Its voice was deep and carried a tone that suggested it was used to being obeyed. "You have entered Imperial space without permission. This is a violation of Galactic Law Section 12, subsection 47. Jake raised an eyebrow. He had never heard of Galactic Law Section 12, or any galactic law for that matter. Humans had only been traveling between stars for about 50 years. Most of what they knew about other species came from rumors and second-hand reports. Commander Vexthala continued speaking. "Your fleet consists of 37 primitive vessels. You are outnumbered 23 to 1. Your weapons are outdated. Your shields are weak. Your engines are slow. You have no chance of victory in combat." The creature leaned forward, and Jake could see more details of its face. The 4 eyes moved independently of each other, which was disturbing to watch. 2 eyes stayed focused on the camera, while the other 2 looked off to the sides. "Therefore," Vexthala said, "I will offer you terms of surrender. You have exactly 72 standard hours to comply with the following demands." Jake found himself leaning forward. This was getting interesting. "First," the commander said, "you will power down all weapon systems and surrender your ships to Imperial forces. Second, you will submit to Imperial authority and accept relocation to designated colony worlds. Third, you will provide complete records of your homeworld's location and military capabilities." The alien paused, and Jake could hear the sounds of his bridge crew shifting uncomfortably. Lisa was taking notes on her tablet. Rick was studying the tactical display with new interest. Amy was already calculating jump coordinates just in case. "If you comply with these terms," Vexthala continued, "your lives will be spared. You will be given work assignments appropriate to your primitive skill levels. Your basic needs will be met. You will live under Imperial protection." Another pause. "If you do not comply," the commander said, and now his voice carried a tone that was meant to be threatening, "your fleet will be destroyed. Your ships will be reduced to space dust. Your crews will die. Your species will be marked for elimination." The transmission flickered slightly, and Jake could see what looked like a massive ship's bridge behind the commander. There were dozens of other aliens moving around, all of them focused on various control stations. The scale of it was impressive. "You now have 71 hours and 58 minutes to decide," Vexthala said. "Use this time wisely. Consider the fate of the 412 other species that chose to resist imperial expansion. Consider the 17,000 worlds that now serve the Empire peacefully." The screen went black. For about 3 seconds, the bridge of the USS Liberty was completely silent. Jake could hear the ventilation system cycling air. He could hear the soft beep of Lisa's communication systems. He could hear the distant hum of the ship's engines. Then something happened that would become the stuff of legend. Jake Morrison, Admiral of the Human Fleet, veteran of the Mars Colony Wars, defender of the Outer Rim, began to chuckle. It started as a small sound, barely audible. But it grew. The chuckle became a laugh. The laugh became louder. Soon, Jake was holding his sides, tears forming in his eyes. Lisa looked at him with concern. "Admiral? Are you okay?" But Jake couldn't stop laughing long enough to answer. The sound was infectious. Rick started grinning. Amy let out a small giggle. Dan was shaking his head and smiling. "Sir," Lisa said, trying to keep a straight face, "should I open a channel to the fleet?" Jake wiped his eyes and nodded, still chuckling. "Yes, fleet-wide. Everyone needs to hear this." Lisa opened the channel. Immediately, voices started coming through from the other ships. "Liberty, this is Captain Susan Hayes on the Defiance. Did you guys just get the same comedy show we did?" "Defiance, this is Captain Bill Rogers on the Maverick. That was the funniest thing I've seen all week." More voices joined in. Captain Danny Pierce from the Resolute was laughing so hard he could barely speak. Captain Lisa Morgan from the Warrior was making jokes about the aliens' appearance. Soon, all 37 ships were connected, and the sound of human laughter was echoing through space. Jake finally managed to control himself enough to speak. "Attention all ships. Did everyone receive that transmission?" A chorus of confirmations came back. "Good," Jake said. "Lisa, prepare a response. I think it's time we introduce these folks to human diplomacy." The laughter continued for another 5 minutes before Admiral Jake Morrison finally managed to get his fleet under control. He wiped tears from his eyes and took a deep breath. Around him, the bridge crew of the USS Liberty was still grinning and chuckling softly. "All right, people," Jake said, his voice still carrying traces of amusement. "Let's get serious for a moment. Lisa, what do we know about these Zephyrians?" Lisa Park pulled up her data files on the main screen. "Not much. Admiral, we have some reports from traders who passed through this sector. The Zephyrians seem to control a large area of space. They have advanced technology and a big military force." Chief Tactical Officer Ryan Clark stepped forward from his station. He was a tall man with gray hair and serious eyes, but even he was still smiling slightly. "Admiral, I've been running the numbers on what we just saw. If that transmission is accurate, we're looking at about 850 enemy ships." Jake nodded. "And we have 37. "Yes, sir. Each of their ships appears to be larger than ours. If their weapons are as advanced as they claim, we would be outgunned by a significant margin." Captain Rick Stone looked up from the tactical display. "So by every reasonable military assessment, we should surrender immediately." "That's correct," Ryan said. Jake walked over to the captain's chair and sat down. He steepled his fingers and looked thoughtful. "And yet, none of us seem particularly worried about this. Why is that?" Amy Foster spoke up from the navigation station. "Maybe because they sounded like they were reading from a script, Admiral. Like they've done this exact same speech 1,000 times before." Dan Murphy, the chief engineer, nodded from his position near the power controls. "Plus, did you see their ship? It looked like someone built a weapons platform and forgot to make it look good. No style at all." Lisa was monitoring the fleet communications. "Admiral, we're getting requests from all the other ships. They want to know what our official response is going to be." Jake stood up and walked to the center of the bridge. "Open a channel to all ships. Command level only." Within moments, 36 other ship captains were connected to the Liberty's bridge. Jake could see their faces on smaller screens arranged around the main display. Every single one of them looked amused rather than worried. "Ladies and gentlemen," Jake began, "we've just received what I believe was intended to be a terrifying ultimatum from the local Galactic Empire. I'm curious to hear your thoughts." Captain Susan Hayes from the USS Defiance spoke first. "Admiral, I've been in space for 15 years. I've dealt with pirates, rebels, and corporate armies, but I've never had anyone threaten to relocate me to a better planet with free housing and a guaranteed job. It sounds like they're offering us a vacation package." Captain Bill Rogers from the USS Maverick laughed. "Susan's right. My crew is actually asking if we can negotiate for better colony worlds. Apparently, some of them are interested in the tropical planets." Captain Danny Pierce from the USS Resolute raised his hand. "Admiral, my tactical officer wants to know if we can get copies of their weapon specifications. He's curious about how they built guns that can destroy planets but apparently can't hit fast-moving targets." Jake raised an eyebrow. "What makes you think they can't hit fast targets?" "Well, sir," Danny said, "if they're as powerful as they claim, why give us 72 hours to surrender? Why not just attack immediately? Either they're being overly polite, or they're not as confident as they want us to believe." Captain Amy Turner from the USS Relentless nodded. "Danny has a point. In my experience, people who are truly dangerous don't need to spend 10 minutes explaining how dangerous they are." Jake looked around at all the faces on his screens. These were experienced officers, people who had spent years in space dealing with real threats. If they weren't scared, there was probably a good reason. "All right," he said. "I'm convinced. Lisa, set up a recording system. We're going to send Commander Vexathala our official response." Lisa's fingers flew over her controls. "Ready, Admiral. Recording and broadcasting to the entire fleet." Jake straightened his uniform and looked directly into the camera. His expression became formally polite, the kind of look diplomats used when they were about to deliver bad news in a nice way. "Attention, Commander Vexathala and the mighty Zephyrian Galactic Empire," he began. "This is Admiral Jake Morrison of the Human Space Fleet. We have received your ultimatum and have given it the careful consideration it deserves." He paused for effect. "After extensive deliberation lasting nearly 4 whole minutes, we have reached a unanimous decision regarding your generous offer of surrender, relocation, and subjugation." Another pause. Jake could hear muffled laughter from some of the other ships. "Our response is, no thank you, we're good." The fleet channel erupted in barely controlled laughter. Jake continued, his tone remaining perfectly polite. "We appreciate your concern for our welfare, but we're quite happy with our current situation. We have enough food, our ships are running well, and morale is excellent." Captain Susan Hayes requested permission to add something. Jake nodded. "Commander Vexathala," she said, stepping into view of the camera. "We also wanted to mention that your ships have a very interesting design. They look like someone crossed a sea cucumber with a failed architecture project. We're not sure if that was intentional, but it's certainly unique." More laughter from the fleet. Lieutenant Colonel Pete Adams from the USS Intrepid raised his hand. "Admiral, can I add something about their weapon demonstration?" "Go ahead, Pete." Pete grinned at the camera. "Commander, we saw your reality shatter cannon destroy that asteroid. Very impressive light show. The crew of the Intrepid gives it 7 out of 10 for visual effects, but we had to dock points because there wasn't any music. Next time, maybe try some classical pieces. We recommend Beethoven." By now, even Jake was having trouble keeping a straight face. "In conclusion," Jake said, "we thank you for your time and your colorful threats. We'll be continuing on our current course. If you need anything else, please don't hesitate to call. We'll be here, not surrendering." He made a cutting motion, and Lisa ended the transmission. The fleet channel was silent for exactly 2 seconds. Then every ship erupted in cheers and applause. "Admiral," Lisa said, wiping tears from her eyes. "That was beautiful." Jake sat back down in his chair. "Well, we've made our position clear. Now let's see how they respond to a little human diplomacy." Aboard the Imperial flagship Eternal Dominance, Commander Vexathala stood in the center of his command bridge, staring at the blank communication screen. His four eyes moved independently as he tried to process what he had just witnessed. In 3,000 years of Imperial expansion, nothing like this had ever happened. The bridge around him was massive, easily 10 times larger than the human ships. Hundreds of Zephyrian officers worked at control stations arranged in perfect rows. Everything was designed to show power and order. The walls were made of dark metal and the lighting was dim and serious. This was a place built for war and conquest. Species Psychology Officer Krelnoth approached the commander's platform. Krelnoth was shorter than most Zephyrians, with lighter blue skin and only 3 eyes. He specialized in understanding the behavior of conquered species. "Commander," Krelnoth said, his voice uncertain, "I have reviewed the human response transmission 17 times. I cannot find any indication of fear or submission." Vexthala turned 2 of his eyes toward the psychology officer while keeping the other 2 focused on the tactical displays. "Explain their behavior." "It is difficult, Commander. Our databases contain very limited information about humans. They are a young species only recently capable of space travel. They come from a single planet in an outer spiral arm of this galaxy." Fleet Coordinator Yexmora joined the conversation. She was tall even by Zephyrian standards, with dark gray skin and scars from many battles. Perhaps this laughter sound is a fear response. Many primitive species display unusual behaviors when faced with overwhelming force. Krelnoth consulted his data tablet. "That is possible, Coordinator. However, our analysis of their vocal patterns suggests genuine amusement rather than distress. They appeared to find our ultimatum entertaining." Vexithala made a sound that was somewhere between a growl and a sigh. "Entertaining? We offered them complete destruction of their fleet. How is that entertaining?" "Unknown, Commander. Their response also contained several references we do not understand. They compared our ship designs to sea creatures and architectural failures. They requested musical accompaniment for our weapon demonstrations." The bridge fell silent except for the constant hum of the ship's systems. Other officers at nearby stations turned to listen to the conversation. This was unprecedented in Imperial history. Admiral Zixfon, the senior military advisor, approached the group. He was ancient by Zephyrian standards, with pale skin and slow movements. He had overseen the conquest of 47 different worlds. "Commander," Zixfon said, "in my experience, there are only 3 reasons why a species responds to Imperial ultimatums with anything other than fear. First, they are insane. Second, they possess weapons technology superior to ours. Third, they are operating under a tactical doctrine we do not understand." Vexithala considered this. "Which do you believe applies to the humans?" "Unknown. However, I recommend we demonstrate our power more clearly. Perhaps they did not fully comprehend the destruction capabilities of our weapons." Krelnoth looked worried. "Admiral, if they are insane, additional demonstrations may not produce the desired effect." "Then we will find out," Vexthala decided. "Weapons Master Kelthar, target the asteroid cluster approximately 2,000 kilometers from the human fleet. Prepare the reality shatter cannon for demonstration firing." Weapons Master Kelthar was a massive Zephyrian with 6 arms and specially modified eyes for targeting systems. "Cannon charging, Commander. Target selected, firing in 30 seconds. Vexithala opened a communication channel to the human fleet. "Attention human vessels. You will observe a demonstration of Imperial weapons technology. Consider carefully what you have seen." The reality shatter cannon was the Empire's most advanced weapon. It could reduce entire moons to basic atoms within seconds. The cannon charged with a deep humming sound that vibrated through the ship's hull. Energy readings climbed to maximum levels. "Firing," Kelthar announced. A beam of pure energy lanced out from the Imperial flagship. It struck the asteroid cluster and continued for exactly 3 seconds. When the beam stopped, there was nothing left where the asteroids had been. No debris, no dust, no trace that anything had ever existed in that location. The bridge crew watched their sensor displays, waiting for the human response. Surely now they would understand the futility of resistance. The communication system activated. A human voice came through the speakers. "Hey, neat light show." The voice belonged to Captain Bill Rogers from the USS Maverick. "Can you do fireworks too?" The crew of the Maverick votes 8 out of 10 for style, but we're deducting points because there wasn't any music. Another human voice joined in. This is Captain Susan Hayes from the Defiance. My tactical officer wants to know if you take requests. Can you spell out words with the energy beam? We'd like to see our names written in space. More voices followed. The humans were treating the weapon demonstration like entertainment. They were offering suggestions for improvement. Some were even applauding. Krelnoth stared at his instruments. Commander, their heart rates have not increased. Their stress indicators show no change. If anything, they appear more relaxed than before the demonstration. Vexathala felt something he had never experienced in his long military career. Complete confusion. Are they mocking us? It appears so, Commander, Yexmora said. They are responding to our most powerful weapon as if it were a performance for their enjoyment. Admiral Zixfan shook his head slowly. In 47 conquered worlds, I have never seen anything like this. Even species with superior technology showed proper respect for imperial power. The human communications continued. Someone was explaining the weapon's effects in terms of entertainment value. Another human was comparing it to something called a fireworks display. A third was suggesting background music for future demonstrations. Dr. Helen Grant, who they learned was the human fleet's chief scientist, began broadcasting a detailed analysis of the reality shatter cannon's energy signature. She spoke about it the way a teacher might discuss an interesting but not particularly impressive experiment. Commander, Krelnoth said quietly, I believe we may have encountered something unprecedented. These humans do not respond to displays of force in any way our databases have recorded. Vexathala turned all four eyes toward the psychology officer. What do you recommend? I suggest we attempt to understand their culture before proceeding. We may be dealing with a species that operates under completely different psychological principles. Or, Yexmora said grimly, we may be dealing with a species that is genuinely insane. The communication system activated again. This time it was Admiral Jake Morrison himself. Commander Vexathala, Morrison said, that was quite impressive. My compliments to your weapons team. However, we've been monitoring your fleet movements and we notice you're positioning yourselves in what looks like an encirclement pattern. Are you planning some kind of tactical demonstration next? Vexathala looked at his tactical displays. The human was correct. The Imperial fleet had been moving into attack formation while conducting the weapon demonstration. Somehow the humans had noticed and identified the maneuver. Should we abort the encirclement? Yexmora asked quietly. No, Vexathala decided. We proceed as planned. Perhaps when they realize they are trapped, they will finally show appropriate fear. But even as he gave the order, Vexathala felt a growing suspicion that these humans would find a way to surprise him again. Commander Vexathala watched the tactical display as his fleet completed the most complex military maneuver in the Imperial Handbook. 847 ships moved in perfect coordination, each one following a precise path that had been tested in countless battles over 3,000 years. The maneuver was called the Inevitable Embrace. It was designed to look like a retreat while actually surrounding the enemy completely. No species had ever escaped once the embrace was complete. It was the Empire's most reliable tactic for dealing with stubborn opponents. Fleet Coordinator Yexmora monitored the movement from her station. Outer ring at 60% completion, Commander. Inner ring at 40%. The humans remain in their original position. Good, Vexathala said. Continue monitoring their communications. I want to know the moment they realize what is happening. The Imperial ships moved outward in what appeared to be a withdrawal. The front ships turned away from the human fleet and began accelerating as if they were leaving the area. The middle ships followed suit, creating the illusion that the entire Imperial force was retreating. Meanwhile, ships from the back of the formation split off and began wide circular movements that would bring them around behind the humans. The pattern was so large and gradual that most species never noticed until it was too late. Species Psychology Officer Krelnoth listened to the human communications through his translation equipment. Commander, they are definitely aware of our movements. However, their response is not what we expected. What are they saying? Krelnoth adjusted his equipment and put the human voices through the bridge speakers. Captain Danny Pierce from the USS Resolute was speaking to his tactical team. Okay, everyone. Looks like they're doing the classic pretend to leave, then surround them move. Jenny, didn't we see this exact same thing in that old movie last week? Communications Officer Jenny Walsh responded with what sounded like amusement. Yeah, the one with the space pirates. The bad guys did the same formation. It didn't work out well for them either. Vexathala turned two eyes toward Krelnoth. They have seen this maneuver before? Apparently in their entertainment media, Commander. They are treating our tactical movement as if it were a scene from a fictional story. The human communications continued. Captain Bill Rogers from the USS Maverick was explaining the Imperial movement to someone off-screen. See how they're pulling back their front ships while sending the side ships out wide? In about 20 minutes, those side ships will curve around and come at us from behind. Then the front ships will turn around and come back. Classic pincer movement. Someone else asked a question that the translators couldn't pick up clearly. Oh, probably about 30 minutes total, Rogers answered. Maybe 40 if they want to. Be really careful about it. Gives us plenty of time to finish lunch. Admiral Zixfon looked puzzled. They are eating during a military engagement? Yexmora checked her sensors. Confirmed, Admiral. Several human ships are showing activity in what appear to be food preparation areas. The USS Challenger is broadcasting what seems to be cooking instructions. Vexathala accessed the human transmission. A cheerful human voice was explaining how to make something called pizza using limited ingredients available on a spaceship. The broadcast was being watched by crews on multiple human vessels. This is Chief Cook Mario Santos, the voice said. Today we're going to learn how to make pizza when you only have basic supplies. First, you need to make the dough. If you don't have proper flour, you can substitute with emergency ration powder mixed with water. The cooking show continued while the Imperial fleet moved into attack position. Mario Santos explained how to create tomato sauce from concentrated paste, how to improvise cheese from food synthesizers, and how to cook pizza in a standard ship's oven. Commander, Krelnoth said quietly, I do not understand this behavior. They are aware they are being surrounded by hostile forces, yet they are conducting normal daily activities. Perhaps they have a plan, Admiral Zixfon suggested. Some kind of tactical response we have not anticipated. Vexathala studied the sensor readings. What are their ship positions? Unchanged, Commander. They have made no defensive movements, no course corrections, no weapons charging. Several ships have actually powered down non-essential systems. The inevitable embrace continued. Imperial ships moved in slow, wide arcs that would eventually form a perfect sphere around the human fleet. It was a thing of beauty, mathematically, precise and tactically flawless. The USS Liberty opened a general communication channel. Admiral Jake Morrison's voice came through clearly. Commander Vexathala, we've been watching your fleet movements with great interest. Very smooth coordination. Your pilots are clearly well trained. Vexathala was suspicious. What is your point, human? Well, Morrison continued, we've been having a discussion over here about your tactical approach. My officers are impressed by the precision, but they have some questions about the overall strategy. Questions? Yes. You see, we've identified your maneuver. It's a classic encirclement pattern, probably designed to prevent escape while maximizing your firepower advantage. Very textbook, very by the book. Vexathala felt a cold sensation in his chest. You are not concerned? Oh, we're fascinated, Morrison said. It's a beautiful example of traditional military thinking. The question is, why are you using it on us? To prevent your escape. But Commander, Morrison said, and Vexathala could hear amusement in the human's voice. We're not trying to escape. We've been sitting here the whole time, waiting for you, to finish your demonstration. The Imperial bridge fell silent except for the hum of electronics. Morrison continued. You've spent the last 30 minutes moving 800 ships into attack formation to trap 37 ships that haven't moved. You've surrounded a fleet that isn't running away. You've prepared to prevent an escape that we never attempted. Fleet. Coordinator Yexamora checked her tactical display. Commander, he is correct. The humans have maintained their original position throughout our entire maneuver. Furthermore, Morrison added, you've arranged your ships in a perfect sphere around us, which means half of your weapons are pointing away from us at any given time. If we were actually trying to fight you, you would have just reduced your effective firepower by 50%. Admiral Zixfon stared at the tactical display. The human was absolutely correct. The inevitable embrace was designed to catch fleeing enemies, not to fight stationary ones. But the most interesting part, Morrison said, is that you've spent all this time and effort to put us in exactly the position we want to be in. What do you mean? Vexathala asked. Well, Commander, we came out here to meet you. We wanted to talk. Now you've arranged your entire fleet in a perfect circle around us, which means we have your complete attention. You can't ignore us, you can't avoid us, and you can't pretend we're not here. Morrison paused. So now that we have your attention, let's have that conversation. 3 hours later, Commander Vexathala found himself in the strangest situation of his military career. He was sitting across from Admiral Jake Morrison in a small meeting room aboard a neutral space station that the humans had suggested as a meeting place. The space station was ancient, built by a species that had disappeared centuries ago. It drifted in empty space between the two fleets, powered by automated systems that still functioned perfectly. The humans had found it in their database of local structures. Vexathala had brought Species Psychology Officer Krelnoth and Fleet Coordinator Yex Mora with him. Morrison had brought Captain Susan Hayes and Dr. Helen Grant. The room was simple, with a round table and basic lighting. Commander, Morrison began, before we discuss anything else, I need to ask you a question. When was the last time you enjoyed something? The question caught Vexathala completely off guard. His 4 eyes moved independently as he tried to understand what the human meant. Enjoyed something? Vexathala repeated. Yes, Morrison said. When did you last do something simply because it made you happy? When did you last laugh? Or create something beautiful? Or spend time with friends just for fun? Vexathala looked at Krelnoth, then at Yex Mora. Neither of them seemed to understand the question either. I do not comprehend, Vexathala said finally. My duties are to serve the Empire. My purpose is to expand Imperial territory and maintain Imperial law. Captain, Susan Hayes leaned forward. But what do you do when you're not working? What do you do for yourself? I prepare for the next mission. Dr. Helen Grant opened a data tablet and showed it to the Zephyrians. Commander, we've spent the last 72 hours analyzing your empire, not your military capabilities, but your culture, your social structures, your communications. What we found was deeply troubling. She turned the tablet so they could see charts and graphs. Your empire controls 412 different species across 17,000 worlds. You have incredible technology, vast resources, and unlimited power. But according to our analysis, not a single member of your empire is happy. Krelnoth studied the data. How did you determine this? We analyzed your internal communications, Dr. Grant explained. We looked at your entertainment broadcasts, your social interactions, your personal messages. We found no expressions of joy, no creative works made for pleasure, no recreational activities. Captain Hayes pulled up another display. Commander, your people work constantly. They follow orders without question. They never create art unless it serves a military purpose. They never play games. They never tell jokes. They never do anything, simply because it brings them happiness. Vexathala felt confused. Happiness is not relevant to Imperial efficiency. But that's exactly the problem, Morrison said gently. You've built an empire that spans thousands of worlds, but you've forgotten why life is worth living. Dr. Grant showed them another chart. Look at this data, Commander. Every species you've conquered shows the same pattern. Before joining the Empire, they had art, music, games, celebrations, and joy. After joining the Empire, all of those things disappear. You're not just conquering worlds, you're destroying everything that makes life meaningful. Yex Mora spoke for the first time since entering the room. You are saying we have made our subjects unhappy? We're saying you've made everyone unhappy, Hayes said, including yourselves. When was the last time any of you looked forward to tomorrow? When did you last feel excited about anything? When did you last experience wonder or curiosity or simple pleasure? The three Zephyrians sat in silence. Vexathala realized that he could not remember feeling any of those things. He had felt satisfaction when missions were completed successfully. He had felt pride when the Empire expanded. But happiness, joy, wonder, these concepts seemed foreign. Morrison leaned back in his chair. Commander, we weren't laughing at your threats because we thought you were weak. We were laughing because we felt sorry for you. Sorry for us. Yes. You have all this power, all this technology, all these resources, and you're using them to make everyone as miserable as you are. You've forgotten that the point of having power is to make life better, not just to have more power. Dr. Grant pulled up a final display. We analyzed the communications from your fleet during our entire encounter. Do you know what we found? Your crews are curious about us. They're asking questions about human culture. They want to know why we laugh. They want to know what our music sounds like. They want to know what we do for fun. She turned the tablet toward Vexathala. Commander, your own people are hungry for joy. They just don't know how to express it because your empire has spent 3,000 years teaching them that happiness is irrelevant. Krelnoth looked at the data with fascination. This is remarkable. I never considered that emotional fulfillment might be a basic need for intelligent species. It's not just a need, Morrison said. It's what makes life worth living. Commander, you've conquered 412 species, but you've never asked them what they wanted from life. You've given them safety and order, but you've taken away everything that makes safety and order worthwhile. Vexathala felt something strange happening in his chest. It was an unfamiliar sensation, almost like sadness but different. What are you proposing? He asked. Morrison smiled. We want to teach you how to laugh. That is not possible. Why not? Hayes asked. Commander, you've spent 3,000 years learning how to conquer. Why not spend some time learning how to enjoy what you've built? Dr. Grant activated a small device on the table. Soft music began playing. It was gentle and melodic, unlike anything in the Imperial databases. This is called music, she said. We create it for no reason except that it sounds beautiful. Some humans spend their entire lives making music, not because they have to, but because they want to. Krelnoth listened intently. It serves no tactical purpose? None at all, Morrison said. It just makes us happy. For the first time in his life, Vexathala found himself wanting something that had nothing to do with Imperial duty. He wanted to understand this music. He wanted to know what happiness felt like. If we agreed to learn, he said slowly, what would happen to the Empire? It would become something better, Morrison said. Instead of ruling through fear, you could lead through inspiration. Instead of conquering worlds, you could invite them to join something wonderful. Hayes nodded. Commander, imagine an empire where every world chose to be part of it because life was better than anywhere else. Imagine subjects who worked hard because they loved what they were building, not because they were afraid of punishment. Vexathala looked at his officers. For the first time, he saw something in their eyes that he had never noticed before. Hope. How? Do we begin? He asked. Morrison grinned. With the first joint Human-Zephyrian Cultural Festival, we'll teach your people about music, art, games, and laughter, and maybe you can teach us about some of the amazing things your technology can create when it's used for beauty instead of destruction. 3 months later, the galaxy witnessed something unprecedented. The sound of an entire empire learning to find joy, broadcast across 12 star systems as 800 Zephyrian ships and 37 human vessels celebrated the first festival in Imperial history where happiness was the only agenda.